Hello everyone, and welcome to Dewy del Mar, or what becomes Dewy del Mar over the course of 42 episodes, and on the day this video comes out, a year's worth of work. Everything started here on the coastal map of Daybreak by Durward. In our city's telling, Spanish immigrants came to the Americas hundreds of years ago and founded a small farming community that would become the metropolis of Dewy del Mar as we know it today. And in celebration of the series' 1-year anniversary, today we're going through each episode to see how the city's evolved, what characters have come and gone, and how you, the community, has helped shape its development. Team effort doesn't even begin to describe it, so up front, I'd like to thank everyone who has commented with ideas and feedback, and of course all the modders, artists, and developers in the Cities Skylines community. This has been an incredible journey, and I'm so excited to see where we go from here. So with all that being said, let's begin. The founders chose this fork of the river for their new settlement, around what would become the Old City, the port of Dewy del Mar, and the farmland in between. With the abundant land, the city expanded fast and spent an ungodly amount of money on a new transit station, in the hopes of attracting more settlers to the region and increasing the labor pool. Those efforts paid off, and as the population boomed, the nascent city council doubled down on crop production and successfully planted the nation's first avocado farm. It also established its first public schools and commissioned Sunnyside Park to celebrate its founding. The park remains open to the public to this day. Soon came the dawn of the industrial age, as the city built what was then the biggest port and rail yard of the region. With all the farmland, it needed an easy way to export its crops, hence the focus on the cargo terminal and rail lines. Of course, today it pales in comparison to the harbor to the south, but at the time it was an industrial powerhouse. Continuing to grow, the city expanded its grid, built its first multi-story commercial buildings, and established the neighborhood of Paradise Hills, which holds one of the busiest transit corridors in the city today, connecting the port of Dewy del Mar to the central station and surrounding districts. By the late 1800s, the city needed higher education to retain its competitive edge, and soon after came the city's first college, San Iglesias College, a religious institute founded by our first main character in the series, the pious Enrique Iglesias. He was running for mayor at the time and wanted to engender goodwill with the population, so he designed a campus up in the neighborhood of Paradise Hills. It's the oldest college in the city today, and tuition is still through the roof. Not properly on the map, the city decided it needed a more touristy downtown to attract visitors. So they upzoned Palm Tree Way, which was the main commercial avenue back then, built a theater district, its first non-Spanish immigrant community with the French Quarter, and the Grand Central Library. To help these tourists and the growing population move around, the city then commissioned its first and only elevated tram network. This tram moved people from the port of Dewy del Mar to the north, through Paradise Hills and Little Havana, connected to the central train station for a big transfer point, then curved into East Old Town with a stop by the Grand Central Library. Later, it would cross the river to end at the university, but the tram line remains one of the most heavily used forms of public transportation today, even after our extensive metro upgrades in the new city center. Then, in response to new tariffs from the federal government, aka the Economy 2.0 patch, the city had to redo its budget and scrutinize city services. More importantly, in response to greater job demand, the city founded the Diego Industrial Park, which would go on to become one of the biggest industrial sites in the city. With increased housing demand as well, the city then built its first proper suburb along the coast, San Alvaro Heights. This became one of the wealthiest areas of the city, no doubt because of the amazing pickleball facilities and waterfront access. But more suburbs meant more cars, so the city delved into traffic management, building 4 new interchanges and a crucial new entrance into the city up north by the port. Around the same time, with a flurry of new technology, aka the Detailers patch, the city revisited some of its service buildings, replacing the original high school with a modern urban variety, then founded a few new parks and built up around Old Town even more in response to greater commercial demand. And then came the huge renovation of the central station. Real estate around the station had ballooned so much that the city decided to move its tracks underground, freeing up space for more development. And not to be outdone by any other city, they commissioned an artist to build the Green Sunken Station, now one of the busiest transfer points of our entire public transportation network. Unfortunately, soon after, the city had its first economic downturn. The 2 companies that had owned the farms by the port, Santa Ana Farms and Sierra Industries, sold the land to be developed into new housing, but a crash in the housing market spoiled the project and led to what is today the poorest area of the city. With housing prices crashing, residents moved out west, looking for job opportunities in the vast farmlands and cheaper housing in the old European-style village, left over from early settlers, including one Marco Vasquez, who would go on to become a major benefactor of Dewy del Mar. Once the recession passed and tax revenue came back, the city decided to revamp its riverside waterfront. First, it built the Palm Tree Way and Myrtle Street bridges as two new ways into the city to alleviate traffic from the port entrance and the dumbbell interchange by La Puerta. Then it developed the park itself, naming it after the aforementioned Marco Vasquez. The park had the city's first marina and Little League baseball field, an outdoor theater and public swimming pool, and of course the Maria Vasquez Memorial, in honor of Marco Vasquez's wife, who sadly passed away before he came to America. By the early 1900s, Dewy del Mar had become such a major economic and cultural center that it built a new city hall to honor both its old Spanish roots and the progressive future it wanted to build for its citizens. Going even further, the city enacted a program that incentivized young artists around the country to come and live in Dewy del Mar and contribute to its art scene. The result was Dolly Hill, home of the now famous outdoor arts market. And if you're looking for a new painting or some vintage vinyl, this is where you want to go. But just because the city appreciated the arts doesn't mean it didn't appreciate a good smokestack too. And in response to the burst in crop production from the new farms out west, it massively upgraded the Diego Industrial Park. It added a new train yard, a whole new highway for industrial traffic, and established the city's first geothermal power plant to power the new factories. Expansion continued up the hills by the downtown area, with the row house community of Vasquez Falls and a new city arboretum. Inside were two new tourist attractions, the old castle ruins left over from the early settlers defending against marauders, and the imposing visitor center tower. The city built the tower just high enough to overtake the tallest office building by Central Station, so that a public works project could claim the title of tallest building in the city. Of course, that lasted for only a few more decades until the new city center emerged. Next door, to alleviate the ever-growing housing crisis, the city approved an expansion of San Alvaro Heights and added a new suburb, Marco del Mar, home to the first public beach park on the ocean instead of the river. The beach by San Alvaro's Island, as we all know, is privately owned and operated by the Homeowners Association of San Alvaro Heights. Trespassers will be prosecuted. And as a last-ditch effort to increase the housing supply, the City Council approved an increase in density of San Alvaro Heights and Paseo Principal along the highway. By then, though, word had gotten out beyond the nation's borders about how bright the future was for Dewy del Mar, housing crisis aside, and this attracted a German entrepreneur named Hans Gruber. He decided he wanted a slice of home, though, so he helped found the biggest immigrant community in the city, Gruber Triangle in Allen Heights. The district is now a mecca for German expats across the country and is home to one of the nation's most elite primary schools, the Hans Gruber Private Academy. Unfortunately, the influx of immigrants led to yet another unemployment crisis, so the city created a special economic zone to the south and built the Puerto de Prosperidad, or the Port of Prosperity. Trade exploded, fueled in no small part by the vast farmlands to the west, creating an economic engine that put Dewy del Mar on the map with the likes of the Port of Houston and Long Beach. And with all the newfound economic prosperity, and with the help of new modern architecture techniques, the city decided it was high time it had a university. It chose the open land across the river by the coast and built a campus to attract students and researchers around the world. Today it's mainly known for its med school program and the university hospital, though its football team, the Marlins, has yet to win the title. In fact, it was because the football team was trash that the city got its first professional sports teams. Two of them, in fact. It sold the property across the river to build Dewdrops Park and Martians Stadium. To the south, trouble was brewing, though. Oil prospectors realized they had slept on the job and built an oil field on bare land with no oil in sight. As they scrambled, a new oil tycoon, Mr. Ortiz, swept up the land across the highway, which was rich in oil, and founded the Ortiz Oil and Coal Company. His success led to an expansion in the port's industrial base, and he even founded a company town nearby. With people rushing in to strike black gold, the city experienced once more another housing crunch, leading to higher prices and an explosion in homelessness. To combat this, the city commissioned the suburb of New Rickman and a public housing project of Little Ortizia, developed by none other than Mr. Ortiz himself. He found the cheapest land he could by the rail yard and highway and sold it as prime riverfront property. The public outcry, though, was swift, and soon the city promised better park amenities and public transportation for the residents of Little Ortizia. Housing development didn't stop there, though, and by the 1940s, car-centered suburbs were all the rage in America. Not wanting to be left behind, the city took a crack at a new suburb across the river from the old port, complete with an auto dealership and a strip mall, to incentivize as much driving as possible. It didn't take long for all the suburban workers to clog the streets, though, so in response, the city took a lesson in transit hierarchy, revamped its bus routes, and introduced the city's first metro lines. Construction was rough though, and after tearing through several water mains, the community denounced all the underground digging, and the city decided to move some of the metro lines above ground. At the same time, to attract a new buyer, the Martians upgraded their stadium, and with the tax revenue from that deal, the city was able to fix a few roads that had been hounding the community for years. By the mid-1950s, the city was pushing the bounds of its existing borders, so they annexed land along the coast with the dream of starting a new, modern city center to complement the old town and central station, but without the height restrictions imposed by decades-old laws. They designed a road layout and transit network that would eventually become the metropolis we have today, and founded the now biggest transit station in the region, Olympus Mons Station. And it didn't take long for people to fill out the space, starting over by the university. In rapid succession, we saw the birth of Little London, a home away from home for British immigrants, University Beach, which holds one of the newest malls in the city, the Fratlands, where you can find all the university's fraternities and sororities, Seabreeze Park, where a drunk college student famously fell into the stream, and the Rave, Dewy del Mar's preeminent party district and home to the famous nightclub, Dewy del Disco. As people moved in, the city decided to undertake the biggest public works project in the nation's history, the National Mall and Museum District. Meant to attract tourists from around the world to the new downtown, the National Mall is now home to the Smithsonian Institute, Botanical Gardens, Air and Space Museum, National Archives, Museum of Natural History, Museum of Modern Art, and the National Gallery of Art. The city had no idea it would grow so fast, however, and the new downtown quickly bumped up against the surrounding terrain, so it had no choice but to build up. It established the new districts of Vista Serena and Pacific Heights, started a new French Quarter with Jardin Enchanté behind the Gallery of Art, and in honor of the original settlers' deposed queen, Queen Sofia, they founded a park plaza with a soaring tower to overlook the rest of the city, Sofia's Torre del Cielo, the Tower of Heaven. Meanwhile, the city started developing its main waterfront. The focus was tourism, so it commissioned a giant Ferris wheel, turned old fishermen's piers into fun little markets, built the Tower of the Sea and the Grand Sofia Hotel, and launched a cruise ship terminal so people could land right in the heart of the action. For that reason, they named it Skylines Landing. And it didn't take long for the rest of the city center to fill out, given its prime location and incredible tax incentives. Within decades, we saw the founding of Lower Queen Sofia, a working-class neighborhood by the train tracks, Uptown, which has the best restaurants in the city thanks to the leisure venues pack, Olympus Mons Station, where you can find a year-round ice skating rink, Chinatown, whose library rivals the Grand Central Library in Old Town and home to the biggest pedestrian mall in the state, Dewey Square, the commercial heart of the city with its bright neon lights and countless billboards advertising you products you definitely don't need, and the Financial District, home to the tallest towers in the city like the Bank of Crypto, the Del Mar Stock Exchange, and a huge private development deal still under construction. With all the newfound tourist traps and global industries, though, it was high time the city built an airport. After an extensive site review, they chose a spot on the coast north of the city and connected it with highways and transit. On a much more chill note, while everyone was focused on building the new downtown, the wealthy citizens of San Alvaro Heights decided they wanted an exclusive golf course, and so they built Alvaro Point Country Club, rumored to hold next year's US Open. Behind Olympus Mons Station and Lower Queen Sofia, the city then undertook some massive highway upgrades to improve connection from the cropland in the west to the harbor to the south and the city center to the east. It also witnessed the dawn of a new Eastern European immigrant community, Little Serbia. And finally, to future-proof its energy infrastructure and tackle yet another unemployment crisis, the city dramatically expanded the port and built a nuclear power plant, in the hopes that the energy exports would prop up the city's failing budget. It also incentivized more offices near the downtown and built more farms in the Western Valley. Which brings us to today. I want to thank you all so much for sticking with the series and supporting the channel. I never dreamed that I would go from, no joke, 89 subscribers when episode 1 launched to over 20,000 today, and that's all because of you. Much of Dewy del Mar is a result of your feedback, so I literally couldn't have done this without you. So with that, I'd like to leave you with a time-lapse of the city's growth. Despite all the mods and patches, I was somehow able to load each episode's save file and take a snapshot, thank God. So as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.